Hey everyone, today on the plastic canvas we're painting Trevor from Zombie 15. Maddie from the Plastic Canvas, and welcome to another video in the Zombie 15 playable character series. Zombie 15 is a 15-minute co-op real-time zombie survival game where you play as one of the 8 survivors. Very fast-paced, really quick, quite frantic. These minis are moving around pretty quick, not spending too long on the board. Each of them have a different colour scheme that makes them quickly identifiable on the board, which is made up by tiles. And today I'm going to be painting up Trevor, who is our sort of brownish kind of character, but really the only brown is in his pants. Everything else is sort of pretty black. So, sorry about that. So up to this point, the characters have started off pretty well painted in terms of their base coat. Trevor's the first one, and from here on out, they've at most only gotten maybe 2 coats of skin on them. So you'll be sort of seeing a lot more coming from the primer. So the black that you can see here is the primer. The brush on primer, and then I've done maybe 2 coats of skin, so he still needs a bit more. So from here on out, you'll be seeing more of the actual painting steps than what you have previously. If you haven't seen them, then check out the Siphon one first. It explains why some of them are already sort of half painted at the start of the video, but so we'll get into painting Trevor, and yeah, we'll get some painting done. So I'm going to give his skin another coat, and I'm starting with the skin, and I've sort of mentioned this a few times now, but it's sort of hard to tell what you guys will and which videos you will and won't have seen at this point. So always starting off with the lowest layer of the mini, and in pretty much every case that's the skin, and then just working up from there up to the top layer. So thinking about which parts of the mini go over the top of another part. So after I finish painting the skin, I'll then paint the boots next, and the reason I'll do the boots next is because the pants go over the top of the boots, and so if I happen to get any of the paint from the pants onto the boots, obviously I'll have to go back and touch it up, but it's less noticeable if paint from a higher level goes onto a lower layer, or a lower level, sorry, because it's going over that level. Whereas if some paint went from the boots up onto the pants, it's going to stand out more because the boots aren't going over the pants are going over the boots. So you'll see the order that I paint them in, but yeah, so skin first, and then just go the next lowest, working the way up to the top layer. Alright, so going to try something a little bit different here that I haven't done before. So with Trevor, he's got a bit of a buzz cut sort of thing. So hair around the top, but then shaved around the side. I'm going to try and sort of have a go at recreating that. So I'm just going to take some of the skin tone. I'm just mixing it off to the side at the moment, and then just some grey, just to see if I can sort of create a bit of just that look of like a little bit of hair, but not much. Just so will hopefully look different enough. It'll still look like skin, but it'll look different enough to the other skin that it'll give that effect. So we'll see how we go. And it's obviously going to need a second coat, but I don't mind the effect at the moment. And then he's just got some black hair. Just a bit of a personal preference for me. When I'm painting clothes and hair and that are black, I tend to do more of a dark grey rather than actual black, just because I find just actual black just gets lost too much in the mini, just because it's so matte and it's just such a dark colour. It almost looks like an unpainted surface. So his t-shirt there on his card, it's a black t-shirt, but I've gone with just with a dark grey, like well on the way to being black. Like you can see, like the gun there is still the primer black, and then you can see your shirt compared to that. So it's not too far off, but it's got just enough so it looks like it has actually been painted and it is sort of the colour that it should be. So yeah, so going to do I'll do the top of his hair now, but I'll do that as the same colour as his t-shirt. Cool. Another reason why I don't paint black a whole lot is that I find dark grey a whole lot easier to highlight and shade than black. So yeah, it's a bit of a conscious decision just to kind of keep things easier for myself as well. Now in Trevor's card, the butt of the gun is, I guess it's brown. I don't think it's supposed to be leather, just from looking at it. But it's almost got a bit of a goldy sort of colour to it. Now I'm not going to paint it gold because it's obviously not supposed to be gold, but I'm going to mix some gold in with the same brown that he used for his pants. I've only got the one brown, so can't do anything else anyway. Yeah, because I don't actually mind the look of what's in the card. It's not strictly brown, but it's just got a bit of a gold tinge to it. So just going to see how this looks. So anytime I'm mixing up a new colour and one that I feel like I won't get right the first time, we'll need to sort of gradually mix in more and more until it's right. I don't. So just bringing in the two that I'm using. So I've got Muddy Brown and Dragon Gold. So instead of making like a pool with Dragon Gold and then dipping and then dropping some brown straight into it and mixing it up and then a bit more brown or a bit more gold until I'm happy with it, two separate drops, one brown, one gold, and then I might like because the base is kind of going to be the gold, bring some of the gold into a third pile and then the brown into that one as well. So I've still got my brown and gold blobs, whatever, and then I've got a third one where they're being mixed, and then I can gradually bring in more as I need to, rather than just having gold and then blob brown straight into that and then end up with a big pool where I'm finally happy with it. That's if you're better at mixing straight away than what I am, then you can probably get away with maybe being able to do it like that. But yeah, for me, I need to have them separate so that I can then bring them in. I'm going to give something else a bit of a go with Trevor. So he doesn't like strictly sort of have camouflage pants on, but just in his card, no, actually looking more closely, he does. Oh, and he's got a Marines t-shirt on. I'm going to try and do a bit of a camouflagey sort of look on his pants. I'll have to take a couple of liberties, just because the detail, it's that sort of digital looking camouflage. I can bring it in rather than trying to explain it. Get the light off there. Yeah, so there you go. So you can see what his pants are looking like there. So I'm going to try and recreate that, but rather than just having like 2 tones of brown, I'm thinking I might go a couple of different tones and just sort of blend some kind of browns together just to create a bit of a camouflage sort of look. Do some dark browns and some light browns. Maybe even a couple of little greens in there just to give it that look. Alright, so I've just gotten a brown, green, yellow and white. Those are going to be my 4 colours I'm going to work with to try and do this sort of camouflage kind of look. I'm thinking I might go one of my older brushes, just this one here, and one where I can kind of sort of, for lack of a better term, I guess, sort of just smush the paint on, and then just sort of get a bit of a blend going on. So first thing, I'm just going to mix just a couple of different browns. So I've got my sort of base kind of brown, and then some different shades of brown. So then I've got, because the brown that I've got is quite dark, so I've just made the dark brown, which is straight from the bottle, then like a mid brown with a little bit of white mixed in, then a much lighter brown with a lot of white mixed in, then my white, and my green as well. So I've got sort of like the base brown there sort of all ready, so I might just hold off on that for the moment, and then we'll just sort of see how we go. So I'm just going to mix just some brown around. It'll look a bit average at the moment. Then bring in some yellow. Maybe some of that darker brown. Alright, well I'm really happy with that effect that I've gotten there. Really cool sort of thing happens when you do like that sort of painting where there's no real there's direction to it, like I'm trying to achieve an effect, but when you just kind of going at it, just sort of seeing what happens, you just get some really sort of happy accidents, which is a term I've stolen from Sam Lanz, a painter that I watch on Twitch, and he's got videos on YouTube with tabletop minions. Yeah, because you're not sitting there with the time to really think about where every single little bit of paint's going. You end up with some good effects that you wouldn't have gotten if you really planned every little bit out. But yeah, so I reckon that's looking better than just the straight brown that was there. So definitely happy with that. The other thing there is that he does sort of have some belts on that kind of. There's a couple of satchels just on each hip there, and then a belt. So now when this dries, I'll be able to paint that brown, and that'll stand out a little bit more. I'll need to neaten up sort of along the bottom of his shirt and his boots and that. But yeah, very, very happy with how that's come up. So that's his base coat done. Yeah, probably not going to do too much more now. Everything now needs to just probably dry. His boots will get a wash. I might do a very, very thin Nuln oil over his pants, just because there is actually a little bit of sort of folds in his pants and that has been sculpted into there, so that'll just bring some of those details out a little bit. And then yeah, wash over the gun just to knock the brightness of the silver down, and then a few little blood splatters, and he'll be pretty well done. I'm not going to do really much else to him, I think. Happy with how he's looking. Toying up with whether I might do another coat on his shirt and just blend in some highlights just across his shoulders and across his back, just to sort of give that effect of light. But yeah, I'll decide on that. But yeah, so that's where I'm going to leave him for the moment. So we'll come back and keep going when he's all dry. Alright, so Trevor's had a good bit of time to dry now, so he's sort of ready for the start of his kind of finishing off steps, I suppose. I'm going to do a black wash on his boots so that I can then do some highlighting after that. I'm thinking I'm going to do a really, really watered down, really, really thin black wash over his pants just to bring out some of the detail in there. I'm not sure with all the different colours that I've used how to actually highlight that, so if you've got any tips on how to highlight a material that's got lots of different colours in it, please let me know. I'm not sure how to go about that at the moment, so I probably won't try. And then I'm going to then decide with his pouches and belt here, just if I'm going to lighten them up a little bit, just because they do kind of get lost a bit in the colour of his pants. In his card, they are brown, so they're the right colour, but I'm just thinking about bringing them out a little bit more, but we'll see how it looks after the wash has gone on. And then I'm just going to do a little highlight on on his shirt, and I'll put a wash on the gun to black wash on the gun just to knock that real brightness down a little bit. And yeah, then it'll be getting into the blood effect at the end. There's some splatters on there, and then painting his base, and then he'll be pretty good. So yeah, so just gonna go through those steps. With the boots, it'll just be just a straight black wash, not washing it, not thinning it down a little bit. But yeah, because I only want to just get the wash to add some definition to his pants. They'll be really thin down. Won't be the same thickness as what's on the boots. I'll probably do a little skin wash there as well. Right, so really thin black wash on his pants there. As I went along, I sort of got less and less thin, just because it was sort of pretty much water just at the start. It's done a little bit. Just sort of wondering if maybe a brown wash might have been better, but I don't know. I don't want to take away from the colours I got going on there, so I don't think I'll touch it up anymore. But yeah, possibly a brown one might have been a little bit better. I'm just going to do the skin wash now. So I'm using Reichland Flesh Shade. This is the wash that I found so far for myself that is easiest for me to go too heavy-handed with, and then you can get some really funky looking skin effects because it can kind of end up looking really blotchy. So I found less is definitely more with the Flesh Shade. So water on the brush, and then just a little bit of wash, and then just really thin layers. It's always easy to add more, much more difficult to take away. But yeah, definitely find that this is the one for me that I need to be really careful with. Really easy to go overboard with, and yeah, if you go too much, I found it just dries in this really funny sort of blotchy way, and it just looks like they've just got a horrible skin condition. So yeah, very light. Doesn't need much. I'm surprised when you then highlight back up how much you can actually bring out the shade that's in there. So you don't need to go too dark at this point. It looks like you need to go more, but yeah, always easier to not. So yeah, so just gonna do his skin shade, and then a little bit of highlighting on his shirt there, and then he'll need a bit of a dry before I come back and do any other steps. So good example there of how easy it is to go too heavy. It just sort of splodged a bit more than what I expected it to. If you then need to come back, just come back with a wet brush. Wipe the wash off, come back with a wet brush, and then you can just wipe it back over and pick up the wash that you need to take off. But yeah, it's looking better there now. A little bit heavy down on the side of his neck there as well, so just wick that up. Alright, so as much as possible, just a thing to just make highlighting and shading easier for myself, I try and paint with my base colours as much as possible. So what I mean by that is, like for example, cloudy grey is the grey that I got. So if I'm going to paint part of a mini grey, I just use cloudy grey. I don't mix it in with anything else. So like, I did that with his boots, and now I've done the black wash over the top. So when I come back and highlight them, I'm just going to highlight with cloudy grey. Whereas with his shirt, because I didn't want to paint it just flat black for the reasons that I said earlier, I've made it just a dark grey. And so just for me at least, I find it trickier to mix up the right colours for my highlights and shades when I've mixed up a colour. Because now I sort of need to recreate that that dark grey and then a lighter version of that. So yeah, normally I try and avoid, at the moment, just as I'm building up my skills, I'm trying to avoid mixing up colours, because then when it comes to highlighting and shading, I'm just having a bit more trouble trying to get the right colours for it. So yeah, so typically I'll just, like, if I'm going to paint something red, I'll just use the red that I've got. If I'm going to paint something blue, just use the blue that I've got, because then I find highlighting and shading easier when I've already got that base colour to go with. So we'll see how we go with some highlighting here. Just going to try and mix up a lighter colour than his shirt. And then yeah, get some highlights across the top of his arms and shoulders, and then let everything else dry before I come back and highlight those other spots where I've done a wash. Alright, so as much as possible, just a thing to just make highlighting and shading easier for myself, I try and paint with my base colours as much as possible. So what I mean by that is, like, for example, cloudy grey is the grey that I got. So if I'm going to paint part of a mini grey, I just use cloudy grey. I don't mix it in with anything else. So, like, you know, I did that with his boots, and now I've done the black wash over the top. So when I come back and highlight them, I'm just going to highlight with cloudy grey. Whereas with his shirt, because I didn't want to paint it just flat black for the reasons that I said earlier, I've made it just a dark grey. And so just for me at least, I find it trickier to mix up the right colours for my highlights and shades when I've mixed up a colour, because now I sort of need to recreate that that dark grey and then a lighter version of that. So yeah, normally I try and avoid, at the moment, just as I'm building up my skills, I'm trying to avoid mixing up colours, because then when it comes to highlighting and shading, I'm just having a bit more trouble trying to get the right colours for it. So yeah, so typically I'll just, like, if I'm going to paint something red, I'll just use the red that I've got. If I'm going to paint something blue, just use the blue that I've got, because then I find highlighting and shading easier when I've already got that base colour to go with. So we'll see how we go with some highlighting here. Just going to try and mix up a lighter colour than his shirt. And then yeah, get some highlights across the top of his arms and shoulders, and then let everything else dry before I come back and highlight those other spots where I've done a wash. So there's some, there's some pretty simple highlighting done on his shirt there. So all I was doing there was just starting with a shade that was just slightly lighter than his shirt, and you can see I started up on the top of his shoulders, each side, his chest, and across the top of his back, and I was just starting at the top of each of his arms, and then really bad habit, but then just sort of licking off the excess paint just to sort of wet the bristles, and then just blend in the edge of that, just feathering it, and just by having that the wet bristles with most of the paint off, then just blending it out until it sort of basically disappears, and going both ways, and then more paint up on the top of his arms, and then just blending a little bit less out. So the first time blending right down to sort of the bottom of this, sort of the high part of his back there, I suppose, and then the next time just not blending quite as far, not as far, and then when that was done, then added a little bit more white into the grey, and then just sort of started back at the top, blending not as far, until it got to the point where the brightest point on top of his shoulder was the colour that I wanted it to be, and then just bringing it down onto his chest, and then similar sort of thing just on his boots there. So not doing too much, but just those main spots where the light's going to be hitting, just adding some highlights there. So that's the basic approach that I've done there. Not too not too much going into it, but just enough to create a little bit of depth. So I'll sort of go on and highlight his pouches there, might do a little bit with his skin, and then I think we're probably going to just about be onto the blood, I reckon. I don't think there's really anything else that I'm going to do with him. So we're probably getting pretty close. I might just run maybe a little bit of the base metal colour just along some of the edges there, just to give some spots a little bit more shine, but that'll be about it. So with the skin, it's just going to be just picking up his nose, just across the top of his brow, and just a tiny bit on his cheeks. The skin's still something I'm having trouble with highlighting. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just find it a little bit trickier than some of the other bits. But anyway, so that's just the basic approach that I went with highlighting there. So I'll just finish off these last couple of bits, and then add a bit of blood, and I reckon Trevor will be pretty well done. So the highlighting that I was doing there was done with my detail brush. I'm just hopping over to my Insane Detail just for his face, just because these minis are so small. Little details like the nose and that, they're really small. So just getting that finer tip. So detail brush for everything else, which gives you, I suppose, a bit of an idea of how small these minis are. Like, to be highlighting like that with the detail brush, like really that'd be at least the character brush, but just because of the size, just don't need one that big. But so detail for the highlighting so far, and now the Insane Detail for his skin. So definitely the key that I've found to highlighting so far is just to start off, don't get carried away with starting off too bright. Start off with a colour that is pretty close to what your like the base coat colour, because you can always go brighter, and just building up those colours. So you don't have to go, like, if you're highlighting a brown, you don't have to go to like a really sort of bright tan colour. Just start with tones that are fairly similar, and just gradually build up until you've got it to the point that you're happy at. It's really easy. I found it was really easy when I first started to just go to like almost white straight away. But in reality, very few things are quite that bright. So yeah, just start at a similar tone. That's the way that I go about it, and then you just gradually get brighter, get brighter, get brighter until you're at the point that you're happy with. Because yeah, always easy to go brighter. Because then at least you're working towards the point that you want to get to, rather than starting off too bright and then having to backtrack and head back down. So yeah, so that's definitely the way that I go about it. Just starting pretty close to the base tone. Blend it out as you need to, which is part of knocking off some of the paint, having those wet bristles, whether you do that with water or lick it off, blend it out, and then just, because really I found you just want to end up with the sharp or the brightest highlight. You just want to end up with just that sharp line at the end, just to finish off that highlight, just like that. So I started with the tone there, pretty similar to the actual brown of the pouch, and then just sort of feathered it down. Started at the top, feathered it down because the light's going to be coming from the top, and then did it again, feathered it down, not quite as far, and then I'm just finishing off with quite a light brown, just on that top edge, just where most of that light's going to be catching. Just like that. So this bottom right hand corner here of this pouch has no paint on it, or no highlighting tone. So I started up in the top left corner, run along the top and down the side, just sort of imagining that the light's kind of coming this way, and yeah, feathered it down, a bit more paint across the top and side, feathered it down a little less, go again a little less, and then you're now just doing that edge highlighting just to catch where the light is actually touching, which is the opposite corner to where I've done no painting. So I've just noticed on Trevor's card there that he has a bandage just on his right arm. So I'm just going to quickly paint that, just using an off-white colour, just skeleton bone, just for a bit of a material colour. And he's also just got some fingerless gloves, so I might just quickly paint them on too. So just going to do his bandage, fingerless gloves, and then just get into the blood effect to finish him off, and then Trevor's going to be done. There was a bad camera angle to win there. Trying to get under his left hand there was a bit tricky while still trying to give you guys a good angle, so sometimes painting takes precedence. Odd, camera just decided to stop recording there. That's alright, straight back into it. Yeah, so he's all done now, in terms of all of his colours and highlighting done. So now just going to add some blood spatter effects. Again, I mentioned this I think in the severity video. When I sort of paint these minis, even if they're really simple like these guys are, I try and tell a little bit of a story with each of them, and so in doing that, just thinking about what the characters in the games are actually doing. So a guy like Trevor, who's got his gun there, he's sort of a bit more of a ranged kind of fighter. So because he's not going to be getting up in the face of all the zombies, he's not going to have as much blood on him as, say, someone like Vance here, who's our, with his machetes, he's hacking and slashing right up in their face, so he's covered in quite a bit of blood. Whereas Trevor will have a bit less. So if I sort of bring like both like Severity and Vance there, Severity with her guns, she's not covered in as much as what Vance is. So just sort of thinking about how they're actually like what they would actually be doing, how they'd be fighting, and so yeah, just sort of thematically just trying to have the way that they look make sense. So not just putting the right colours in the right spot, but also having them actually looking like they actually fight in the way that they're meant to. So just mixing up a little bit of red and brown just for the blood. Mentioned this a few times now, but when I first started doing the blood effects, I just used red, and yeah, it was way too bright. Ended up like I painted all the zombies, and they've got quite a bit of blood on them, and yeah, so I just used straight red. Same technique, so with an older brush, just going to be sort of doing a bit of a stippling effect. So I've just got the bristles spread out a bit, just so that as I dab, it'll give that spatter effect. But yeah, when I was first doing it, just straight red, and it was just way too bright, way too vibrant. It literally just looked like they had red paint on them. So after I did that, realised it was too bright, then brought in some brown just to try and knock the vibrancy off. Because if the blood isn't fresh, it's not going to be quite so bright. So yeah, so just with that brown, it just dulls it down a little bit and makes it look a bit more like, just makes the blood look a bit older. Because if it has come from a zombie, if they've been dead for a bit, then it's really not going to be that bright anymore. Yeah, so pretty simple, just like that. Just sort of just stabbing with the bristles there. But what I do also like to do is then with just some straight red and not wiping so much off on the paper towel, is just coming in with just a straight red. Need it a little bit more. It's a bit too thin. Just need to add a little bit more paint. Just coming in and with a little bit more on the brush, and just that red, then kind of going over just some of the spots, because it makes it look a little bit more fresh. So some of it's dried, some of it's fresh, just because they're not all of the blood that's going to be on there is going to be old blood. Some of it has been from a recent fight. Oh, get you back in there. There we go. Yeah, so just a little bit more like that, so it looks like, so he's got some dried blood up here that he got a little while ago, whereas this blood down here has been there for a little bit. Maybe he's walked through a little bit of blood. And I'm going to give a little splatter on, a bit more on the back there. Just like that. Alright, so there we go. So that's looking pretty good. Happy with that. Maybe even a little bit up in there. Whatever, that's enough. Can spend all day adding blood effects. Alright, so Trev's our brown guy, so he's going to get his brown base now, and then he's going to be done. So yep, a couple of coats to get over that black. Then we'll call him done. actually looking pretty good with just the one coat. Brown covers the black pretty well. I might, if I think after it dries that I need to, I'll come back in and give another coat, but I don't think I'll need to do any filming for that part. You guys can see what I'm doing there. So there we go. So there's Trevor finished. Number Zombie 15 Survivor number 5. Yeah, looking pretty cool. Really happy with his pants there, getting that camouflage look. That was just a bit of an experiment that ended up working. And then yeah, just some pretty simple highlighting along his shirt there. I think it's, you know, does the job for this sort of game. So yeah, so thanks very much for hanging around, watching me paint Trevor. Hope you got something out of it, whether you pick something up that you can try, or even if you just simply enjoyed watching me paint. Thanks for checking out my videos. Yeah, as usual, please leave a comment below, something that you like, something that you think can be improved. Being video number 5, yeah, still working all of this out. So yeah, please do leave some feedback so that I can make this channel as good as possible for everyone. But yeah, really appreciate you guys sticking around. Yeah, if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with the other videos that are coming up and show that you're enjoying these. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks.